throughout the pandemic, so many different industries have been transformed, especially the music industry. Most of you probably won't see a concert until sometime next year. And a lot of time has been spent across the board to really understand where the future is. And you're really trying to pick apart how to reach audiences, how artists should monetize, how to even play live music, if there even is such a thing during this time. So we're really excited to dive in and learn more. In this conversation, we'll place a special focus on the culture, technologies, and the business models of the music industry. And we'll discuss live concerts, new artists, streaming, and more, again, with this great group of analysts. So without further ado, let's kick it off. Let's bring Jesus Malverde Gonzalez. He's the president and co-founder of Sonus Agency and the former SVP of Brands and Partnership at Universal Music Group. He's been in the business for so long. He's widely recognized as a Latin music industry thought leader, in the cultural lifestyle marketing space. And he's actually a former recording artist himself. Jesus, I know you've leveraged firsthand insights. You have a passion for music and entertainment. We're really excited for the work that you do to help brands and agencies and artists and nonprofits connect the dots between music, culture, and commerce and philanthropy. And we're so happy you're here with us. Hello, how are you? Are you cooling off this heat?
Oh man, well the LA heat, right? Boy, thank you so much for the kind words and the tremendous plug as a long-standing fan of the TheFutureParty. Cash App coming through right now. As you stated, my agency Sonus actually launches next month. Officially, I'm thinking, Mexican Independence Day on some grito de guerra type stuff. But formally, SVP Brands and Partnerships at UMLE. UMG's Latin subsidiary that consisted of 6 labels for the U.S. from Latin Urban at Universal Latino, home to our golden boy J Balvin. Shout out to my former team and everything that's transpired there, to Regional Mexican. So really got to be part of that collective and team effort that has brought Latin urban and Latin music and culture to the forefront globally. Right. I also spent some time on the global side as VP of Music Partnerships at Fruct, which is part of the Octagon, Rogers & Cowan, now PMK IPG family. So got to go general marketing global, part of the MasterCard Global Music team. Shout out my former team over there, Mark Owen, Shirley Hughes, and everyone. So really have gotten to do some amazing music campaigns across genres, across regions, with some brilliant folk. So happy to share that here. As I come from the Latin side, wanted to share a quick snapshot. This conversation is about the industry at large, right? But just to tout the continued tremendous growth, we're looking at 30% year-over-year growth for Latin music in comparison to all other genres at 10 and 14%. It surpassed country and EDM in consumption. Bad Bunny was the #1 artist globally at the start of this pandemic, remember? And on any given day, the top 10 YouTube music videos are going to have a majority of Latin talent. Now the big boys are paying mind with Interscope launching Interscope Latino, Capital's independent services label, Caroline, starting and staffing a whole Latin team. Colombia signing Rosalia. This is a whole other conversation. Stay tuned, but definitely a lot to digest, right?
Yeah. It really sounds like we should create a whole nother, round 2. Almost.
Well, we were talking about that, right? So, but back to the subject at hand, right? This conversation, and you guys are really in for the treat with this distinguished panel, is about the industry of large, because this pandemic and these conditions do not discriminate based on genre, on language, or geography, right? We are looking, and I think of the passage, necessity is the mother of all invention, right? And we are witnessing that firsthand. I want to say kudos to you, Boye, the whole TheFutureParty team, NVE, for curating these timely conversations with Face the Music and the whole series of Creative Quarantine, because we truly are in this together, right? Each question we address just as the Latin, recap could warrant a whole conversation in itself, right? So bear with us if we don't dive too deep, but the aim is to share best practices, initial practices, as we really are in uncharted territory. And hopefully we're all better informed as a result and one step closer to normalcy, or what the new normalcy will be. Jesse, if you can please say some words about try to summarize your long, distinguished career.
I appreciate it, Jesus. Thanks for having me. Salute to everybody checking this out, and of course to the Future Party for putting this all together. So my background is originally in the talent representation space, where I was finding and developing artists. My company is called New Agency, and early on I had a lot of success finding and breaking artists. Signed artists like J. Cole, Big Sean, Mike Posner, Wale, Action Bronson, Logic, Capital Cities, Action Bronson, a bunch of others too that I'm forgetting. But it was a lot of fun representing artists. But about 6 years ago, I changed my business model to where I thought things were evolving, which was the intersection of music, technology, and brands. And essentially what we do now is music strategy and partnering brands and artists and layering a strategy around that to make this even more impactful. And so it's a small entrepreneurial boutique vision, and it's very hands-on at this point. And we've got our own IP that we developed. Like I produced the show Crown with Elliott Wilson, and then also a newsletter, Beats and Bites, which goes out weekly. So I'm in the newsletter game, so to speak, alongside Future Party, which I love, on their daily newsletter. And so I mean, that's kind of what I do, is really kind of brands and artists partnerships, and really have my finger on the pulse of where things are going next.
Amazing. And guys, do yourself a favor, sign up for that newsletter. You'll be better informed because of it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah?
Hi. Thank you, Jesus, and thank you to the Future Party for having me. I'm Sarah Morris Powell, and I'm an artist manager at C3 in Austin, Texas. And a little bit about myself. I am from Price, Utah, and I, like everybody, enjoyed listening to music. That isn't necessarily a prerequisite for entrance into the music business, and that's why I love it, is it's so universal. So I went to college in LA, and my social activity in college was going to live shows, but I really didn't have any understanding that there was a business behind those shows in the music business. So I graduated from college in 2008, which at the time I thought was probably the worst year to be graduating from college, but my heart goes out to everybody right now, entering the job market and not really knowing where to begin. So I graduated in 2008, and I went to a temp agency that happened to be across the street from one of the bars I partied at in college. And I just remember walking in and thinking like, wow, life is going to change. So the temp agency set me up in the mailroom at William Morris, which, in all candor, I didn't even know what that was. I mean, I was able to do some research and figure it out, but I just didn't have a background. I just thought to myself, if I can read and write, I'm going to be able to get a job. So needless to say, that was a crash course on the music business really quickly. I lucked out, and I got a job working for an agent named John Marks there. And I stuck with him for about 5 years while I was at the agency. And his world was predominantly pop. So I really lucked out. I had the privilege of working alongside him while Lady Gaga was breaking, and he signed Bruno Mars, and then working on bands that I loved. Not that I didn't love them as well, but I was more interested in the rock space initially. And so working on Peter Gabriel and Billy Idol and artists like that, I was really able to cut my teeth and, just by answering someone's phone, meet so many people. And, that it was just time to move on. It was time to grow. And I had worked with C3 in the booking capacity, and they had reached out about a position in their management space. And So I decided to take the leap and move to Austin, Texas, where the company is based. And when I started the company, signed a band called Wild Cup, which was an kind of alt rock pop band. And through that, started to learn the ropes of radio and working with an indie label, and went on to help them get their first top 10 hit at Alternative. And then I went on to take over as day-to-day on a band called The Head and the Heart, who were in the major label system. So I was able to learn the major label system with the band on Warner. So all that kind of culminated learning in an autonomous working environment, thankfully, to me signing a band that I'm working on right now called White Reaper in the rock space. And it's been a really interesting time for, for rock bands, in a dialogue where there's a lot about, rock being dead, and is that the case? And I don't believe it is. I just think it's going to be very difficult for a few bands to break through, and that we need to really skirt the old paradigm of, kind of misogynist rock space in order to make it work. So they're on Elektra, just had their first #1 at radio. And, we're planning, like everybody, to have a big summer in touring and in the festival space. And, I couldn't wait to pack my bags to go to Europe to get on the road with Pearl Jam. And, that all crumbled, for all of us. And so, in a way, I'm just interested to hear what the questions are and what the panelists have to say about how do we regroup and how do we make lemonade, out of this period of time. So yeah, that's me. Thanks for having me.
Well, wonderful. Glad to have you on. Dan?
Hey, thanks for having me, Jesus. Thanks for having me, Future Party and everyone. I'm Dan Runcie. I'm the founder of Trapital, which is a media company that covers the business of hip hop. I call it the media company for the people that are taking hip hop to the next level. I started Trapital because I wanted to see hip hop artists and the entrepreneurs and the moguls get the type of recognition and coverage that we had seen done from other industries about the business successes, the business challenges, and so on. And I've been working on it now for over 2 years, been full-time for the past year, and it's been great. And ultimately, it's working to help serve that goal. And I want to continue to expand beyond to more and more to cover all sorts of artists and the business moves that are happening.
Wonderful. And guys, another newsletter that you'd be better served to sign up for right now, Trapital. Big fan as well. Shenandoah, last but definitely not least.
I am not in the newsletter business yet. But I'm Shenandoah, and I'm the Vice President of Pricing Platinum for Live Nation US Concerts. I started in the business with Sarah at WME. She was there when I joined in 2012. It's a talent agency where we represented everyone, as she mentioned, from Bruno Mars all the way to Drake, Lady Gaga at the time. I'm not sure where she is now. And just any big artist you can think of, William Morris Agency pretty much has it on lock. Started there, and after about 3 years, I moved over to Live Nation at a recommendation of my boss at the time, Peter Grosslight, who sadly passed away the year I transferred over. And he was the head of music, the co-head alongside Mark Geiger. I went over to Live Nation, started assisting Brett Gallagher, who was the president of Southern California. And at that time, we were trying to get the Greek theater. So I dived in, bullhorns, just ready to take it and make it a Live Nation venue and own that RFP process, which was a really cool kind of experience. Took that and pivoted over to doing inventory and revenue management. Started as a coordinator and then worked my way up to vice president of my division, where I was able to double revenue year over year for the last 5 years, to the tune of over $100 million year end last year. We were making record progress until, the government said, stay the fuck home. So excuse my language there, sorry. But until concerts got shut down, and right now Live Nation as a company, we're just looking at really cool ways to get to the next level.
Absolutely, absolutely, and we feel your
I couldn't help it; it came out of my heart.
Great. Well, again, guys, so privileged and honored on my end to be having this conversation with you all. We're going to start a little light in terms of kicking this off. Can all of you name an artist that you've really seen killing it during the COVID era when it comes to the shift from real life to virtual and connecting with their fam? We'll start off with Jesse, then Sarah, Dan, then Shenandoah. Jesse?
Awesome. I've been very impressed with Kitty Cash. I feel like she has created this brand, Kitty's World. And I've known her for a long time as an artist and a creative director, but she's taken it to a new level with live animation. And she's intertwining her story and her brand and her music with these live animation shorts on IGTV. And they're so captivating. And in a world where you don't have that much backdrop and you don't have that much that you can play with in terms of creativity, in terms of your environment, because you're not on planes, you're not at events, you're not at fashion shoots in the same capacity, she's been very captivating with her content and very creative.
Agreed. Sarah?
Yeah, I hate to choose such an obvious one, but I just think it's undeniable, is Cardi B. I love seeing the OnlyFans sign up. I think that's brilliant. Having, instead of a one-time event, knowing that there's something consistently that people are going to pay for, and it's a small amount. So month by month, people are signed up, and I think that that's a way to really monetize this moment. And, and then she's just so good at being candid on socials. And I think that is what we want right now. Speaking for myself, I love getting on Instagram and seeing what Cardi's up to. And, honestly, I'll probably sign up for OnlyFans and see what is that next level look. I can't believe there's a next level look, but I think she's absolutely killing it.
Absolutely, right? That premium content and monetization, right? That crossover, right?
Yeah.
Dan?
Yeah, the person that sticks out for me, another obvious one, The Weeknd. Even before he dropped his album, his record label was trying to say, hey, this pandemic, we don't know how it's going to play out. Maybe you should pause. But he's like, no, I trust my fans. I'm going to put After Hours out. One of the biggest albums that he's had. Blinding Lights continues to break records. He just did this AI thing with Spotify, I'm sure a few of you may see. And at the height of the protest and uprisings, he was one of the early artists that donated a lot of money and called out the major record labels and the digital streaming providers to follow up and join him in the fight to support racial justice. So I think he has continued to use his platform well, especially when things didn't turn out the way he planned to.
Absolutely. And that Wave XR whole TikTok experience is taking the next level. And I know we'll dive in a little deeper. Shenandoah?
I have two. Obviously Swiss Beats and Timbaland. I have the best time doing verses. I am not in my 20s anymore, so a lot of the things they put together is very nostalgic for me, and I have the best time. I really love the engagement. I really like how they're able to cross into new areas and new regions. When they did the Beanie Man Bone Tequila versus Clash was, I grew up in Jamaica at that time in the 90s to 2000, so I had a blast. I was sipping rum and pineapple punch all day. And the second I would like to say is her. Singer, songwriter, just beautiful person and artist. And she has a Girls with Guitar thing going on where she's able to collaborate online with other musicians like Chloe and Halle and Leanne LaHavis. And I think it's great. And I think lately I saw a post where she's actually, trying to collaborate on a new song with her fans. So she started a tune and said, finish it up. And I think that's a really cool way for young people to be discovered now when they're at home and feeling very creative and maybe feeling lost. So I really appreciate artists like that are really tuned in a really intimate way with their fans.
Absolutely. I mean, all amazing examples. And I think the one we have to mention as well is obviously Travis Scott, right? The way he launched this whole period. And when that dropped, I mean, it was insane with Epic Games. So amazing, guys. So as we dive in here, this next question is for Jesse. Jesse, again, Beats and Bytes, incredible. I already told the viewers to sign up for the newsletter. If they haven't, please do so now. I'd like to expand on one of your most recent articles on building content brands in this new environment. As stated, the big challenge right now in the creative commercial sense is how to innovate around release strategies. You mentioned that sitting on content isn't going to work. The streaming platforms need to attract new subscribers with fresh material, but it's tough to make high-grade content with production more or less halted. Where have you seen music professionals and brands think outside the box?
It's a lot more complicated right now than it is ever before to cut through the noise and to really create traction as a new artist. I think the case study that we should look at is influencers, in the fact that they are embracing new technology and trends and memes and putting their voice on it. So I think that really a big example of this would be like if musicians are jumping into the conversation. And I feel like now more than ever, you need to be on the pulse of new trends and new technology and new filters and new platforms, because that's where traction is really high, or at least engagement is really high. And I feel like that's one hack that we can see with artists, but it's complicated on how artists can really break through the noise right now. But I look at influencer space, and I feel like musicians are influencers with way more talent and have a lot more of a voice and a lot more to say, and are creators. So I feel like if influencers are doing it well, musicians can take note on that and really run with the opportunity to really get in the conversation and infuse their brand and their art into what's hot and relevant right now in the news cycle.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we're seeing some examples of that. This next question is for Shenandoah. Can you describe your role a little bit more in depth and explain how Live Nation is working to think differently during this pandemic?
Yes. So my role specifically is, what I do is I use data, historical data, and metrics to make pricing decisions for tickets to a show. We do revenue projections, and really try to make decisions that would optimize revenue for a tour or a one-off play. So that's my day-to-day. And what Live Nation is doing currently, during the situation, is just really trying to keep the artists and fans engaged. We're just constantly trying to find new creative ways to keep everyone engaged. So whether it's doing drive-in shows, live streaming, tours, virtual concerts like Insomniac have like these rave-a-thons that are really popular. And that's pretty much what's going on right now, is the drive-ins, the virtual tours that I think is here to stay.
Absolutely. Right. As I said at the intro, I mean, we're all in this together, sort of figuring out best practices and new practices, right, in this new normal. So it's exciting to see. This next question is for Dan. Dan, Trapital, right? Not Trapital. I threw my little Spanish nuance on it yesterday. Trapital, again, is amazing. It really elevates the business of hip hop and culture, and calls out the fact that this should also mean elevating the business and success of Black people. Some compare Trapital to the Harvard Business Review of hip hop, and it truly is. Your in-depth analysis are like Forbes, Harvard Review, Wall Street Journal level dissections of the deals that we might see superficially, right, and releases and on Complex or Vice, but you really go in. So folks, check it out. can you tell us more about HipHop's role with everything going on recently with protests and everything around George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and social justice movements, about HipHop's role in the fight for justice and innovation, and to build on this, what we have spoke about and what you're keeping track of, how labels and artists like Weeknd are being held accountable and announcing calls to action and investment, right, and meaningful change. Can you tell us a little bit more in depth on that?
Yeah, first off, thanks for all those kind words and comparisons. Appreciate it. Hip hop, and specifically Trapital, the fight for justice, is something that's been near and dear to me. And as you put it, that's exactly true. This is not just an elevation of hip hop. It's also recognizing that most of these business leaders are Black and rarely have gotten the level of coverage and the respect for the insights that they deserve. And I think a lot of that itself is ingrained within hip hop itself as an art form that is strived and vied for that legitimacy, for that push. And if we look back to the late 80s, early 90s, groups like Public Enemy, groups like NWA, they were painting a picture and bringing to light things that weren't respected about or talked about elsewhere. And specifically with Public Enemy, them talking about police injustice, fight the power, so many of those themes became so relevant, especially now in the past 5-6 years since the Black Lives Matter movement has taken off. And, unfortunately, this past May and June with the murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and others. And hip hop itself has had a strong role in this. I think you saw a lot of artists step up in that moment. A lot of that was expected, just given how artists have continued to do this over time. But it's a lot of that same mentality that stuck through. And I think what you see is that as the art form itself gained more power, we've literally seen this happen in the past 30 years till now. We're seeing hip hop's dominance, and we're questioning how dominant other past genres of music once were. But as artists and as the companies that artists back continue to gain power, they're able to gain leverage for the causes and things that are important. And I do think that the end of May, early June, around the time of those murders, was a moment to bring that to light. We were able to see whether it was Jay-Z, whether it was The Weeknd, Drake, others, or we also saw many of the things that Rihanna had done, Tierra Whack. You saw artists from all different corners of the world speaking out, whether it was donating their money, donating their time, or using their influence to create some type of political action or outcome that they wanted to. And unfortunately, this isn't something that could have happened to that same power if we're dating back to, early 90s when Rodney King happened. So artists now using that platform is great. I think the next step of this, though, as hip hop has expanded with the business partnerships that a lot of these artists now have, how can they hold a lot of these brands accountable? Because one of the things that we've seen, and I started a spreadsheet to track the artists and to track the companies that are in this industry that have put out statements. It's great that you've donated money. It's great that you've done something for a particular cause, but what are those long-term things that you can do to help empower the culture that you profit off, empower what you represent? And a lot of it focuses on who are the people that you can hire and give them the platform and the opportunity that they can have so that they can continue to have influence, and what type of money and support can you give to the businesses and those that want to have that continued success. And as hip hop gains more power, we've started to see that. And, I think we still need to see how things play out. I know there's a lot of ongoing initiatives that have started and are happening in the post-uprising era, but I'm interested to see how that plays out. But hip hop is in a good position to continue moving that forward.
Absolutely. And again, all these questions could be breakout sessions onto their own and a whole series. But yes, incredible insight there. And as we see this call for accountability, we hope to see that accountability lead to sustained action, right? With representation of the creators of this culture, of the content creators being represented on the corporate side, right? And that's definitely the aim. As we shift, Sarah, this next question is for you. C3 Management, as you stated, works with artists like White Reaper, The Strokes, Jack Harlow, Phoenix, Duran Jones, and The Indications. As we're getting into this new normal and content and sharing of content in the digital space, how can artists maintain artistic integrity in the digital space, or that balance?
Definitely. Yeah, I think that I've had to remember as a manager that this is a brand new ask for clients, and we're asking them to do something that is entirely different in a lot of ways than what they thought they were getting into in being in a band or being an artist. And it's also another level of intimacy. You're inviting people most likely into your homes, although we've been able to, I think, get out a little bit now that we have, more so than we were in March and April, to shoot stuff offsite. But it can be really difficult, I think, for artists to digest and just how they come across on digital platforms. And so I spent a lot of time thinking about this, because you don't want to be left behind, but you also don't want to conform. And so I think it's important for bands and artists to be watching what others have been doing and just decide how do you feel about that? Does it resonate? Does it feel on brand? Are you comfortable hosting a weekly cooking show from your kitchen on IG Live? And if you're not, it's okay. You don't have to do that. I think leading with music and what got you into this in the first place is sort of where we always have to return and be generative from that place. I think it's really easy, and I've felt this during this time, to feel like I'm falling behind, or I'm not generating like another artist. And I think just really honing in, defining what is my aesthetic, what is my brand, and how can I participate in this time, but not feel like I'm giving something up, because nobody signed up for this. This wasn't what anybody intended to be doing when they said, I want to play shows, I want to be an artist. They knew that there would be public exposure, but in this way it's online, and it's in a medium that lives forever. And so it's not super forgiving. And in a time where comments can be really hard to look at, I think managers, speaking specifically to my role, have to be really mindful of what we are asking or presenting to our clients, and just letting it be as organic as possible.
Absolutely. And I think you touched upon the core there. It has to be authentic and genuine to the artist's DNA and their core values and principles, and the brand DNA, right? And how it all comes together, and the artist with their fan bases and what they expect of them, or what they've come to expect, right? So there is that balance. And going back to Dan in that conversation, we are seeing shifts, some reports and articles out there on how brands now, where before the politics of it were separate, now brands, you look at the Nikes and some of these very progressive brands are looking to partnering with very vocal and outspoken, even on the political tip, what used to be a little taboo with brands, right? So we are seeing that shift in the narrative. As far as the creative, right, which it really comes down to, this is a question for all. Producers and artists have been connecting via Zoom. Crazy how that just, grew up into the vernacular, right? Zooming to produce their new hits, which originally many thought, how could this ever work? Yet it seems artists are dropping albums and songs produced in lockdown rapidly. Do you think remote music production will be something to continue, or is creating in studio unmatched? Again, we'll go with Jesse, Sarah, Dan, and Shenandoah.
I feel like there's definitely going to be a lot of attrition with the virtual collaborations. First of all, we're not going back into a pandemic-free life anytime soon. So definitely artists are getting used to collaborating. There are some cons from it, because it's forcing you to create really on the fly. It's a lot harder to collaborate. You have to show your true colors as an artist in a lot of ways. But there are amazing platforms coming up where you can collaborate. Splice, a platform like that is just going to expand and grow. They were already on the right side of the trend. And I think what we're going to see through this pandemic in a lot of instances is certain brands that were already towards or headed towards the future are just going to accelerate into that position. So Splice is a great place to look when you're figuring out ways to collaborate with beats, with producers to get your music out. And it's a growing community, and it's become a hotbed for collaboration and for making tracks.
Amazing. Yeah, and Splice, for those of you that don't know, it takes producers like basically their custom sounds, right? And creates producer packs and sound packs that then allows them to monetize that, right? Because a lot of folks, if you know producers, they go in and they try to splice those sounds anyways from these producers. So this is a legit monetization of that practice, right? Producers sharing their custom sounds.
And it makes it so that anybody can be a producer essentially, because you have those beat packs. So you can take the beat pack and then you can record on top of it, and you're already off to the races in terms of getting these clearable, hot samples to pull from.
Exactly. Sarah, anything to add?
Yeah, I think it's exciting that because we've had to be innovative in this moment and how to connect with, artist to artist. It has democratized the process, and that, now anybody can really participate, which is amazing. Do I personally think that it takes the place of sort of human to human interaction in a studio? I don't. And I think that will always be everybody's first choice. But, in a really busy schedule for an artist, when you're traveling, you're on tour, you're busy at home, you want to start a family, whatever it is, this is an amazing option to be able to lean on, and creates flexibility. And if you want to get together with short notice, that kind of thing. So I do think it's a silver lining to kind of emerge during this time, but I don't, at least in my world, think that it will be my first choice, because there's just something about the humanity of getting in a room together, which I think we're all missing, whether it's making music or just seeing our friends. It's great that I can do a house party, and it satiates me for now. But I'm dying to be able to get in a big, actual physical group of people.
Man, as we're all dying, right?
Yeah.
But this is taking us there, these conversations. Yeah. Thank you, Sarah. Dan, anything to add?
Yeah, I agree with what they both said. I think naturally you'll see a bit of attrition, just given that so much time has been spent these past 5 months to improve the capabilities of what can be done at home. And now that so much has been invested in that, it's not like you automatically, boom, go flip the switch and you just go back to the way things were before that. I think some of the shift may honestly reflect what we've also seen just in the broader workplace dynamic, where sure, co-working spaces like your WeWork and Airbnbs are going to lose a percentage of the population and customer base that they just didn't have, because people have spent so much time upgrading their home offices and being able to do work there. With that said, I think, that was a great point in terms of not having that human interaction. So could there be some type of, not necessarily a hybrid approach, or people coming in specifically for certain things? I think part of the camaraderie of the community and being able to bounce off of each other is inevitable, especially given the creativity in music, but it may not be quite as standard operating procedure as it has been in the past.
Right, so a blended approach to the new normal. Shenandoah?
There's not much to add there. I echo Sarah's statement that there is a lot of magic that's in a studio, and how people feed off of each other's energy, when they're interacting and creating music together. I do also think that when you're in a studio, there's a lot of people that may come by that may not, be on, Splice producing a beat, but may have some real great input there. And I feel like a lot of music have been made that way. And I don't think that artists are just going to toss that and, not value those kinds of, personal inputs. But I do think that having this technology like Splice, like that is going to be something that's going to be utilized a lot, especially by these tweens and, you know, millennials to get together. Because right now, I think internationally music is growing, and people are becoming, you know, wanting to work, you know, with others at a greater distance from them. And I think that's going to be the next wave is, you know, musicians getting together from all over the world and world music making a big boom. One more ad I'm going to say to this point is right now artists are becoming their own labels. You know, they're producing, they're doing distribution, they're literally wearing every single hat. And I'm really curious to see what labels will be at the end of this, because it's all becoming a one-man shop in-house, and artists are just as valuable and are trying to own their own masters and rights and own their business. So there's that.
Absolutely. A lot of moving parts. But yeah, the camaraderie, the intangibles of the studio experience, right? The creative process. But again, the creative process is right now strong, and we're seeing that in output. So we're making do, and the cream is rising. This next question is for Dan. Dan, you recently did an article on Cash App and how it accomplished the unthinkable, name dropped by over 200 hip hop artists, becoming the modern brand's dream, right? To be integrated into the culture. Can you explain how hip hop helped Cash App go faster, as you know, really detailed in your article?
Yeah, thanks. Cash App has really been a fascinating story, especially as it relates to hip hop, because back when this company started, of course, Cash App is under Square. It started the same way that a lot of tech startups will start. They have their small base, and the base is normally the people that are the friends or family of the founders themselves. And as you can imagine, this leads to a pretty homogenous user base that is focused in the main tech centers. But as Cash App started to grow, it started to gain traction with artists specifically. Cash App leaned into that. Their Cash App Fridays, I'm sure anyone on social media has seen these. They've been a tremendous way to give away money. And of course, people may think, okay, well, they're clearly losing money from that, but it's a pretty low cost if them giving away money is an opportunity for them to get their name out there. They can then partner with artists themselves who can give away money. We mentioned Travis Scott earlier, him, Lil B, they were some of the early artists to do this. And now we're seeing it just so much more commonplace. For anyone that saw this past week, both Cardi B and Meg Thee Stallion had given it away as part of their WAP merch and the campaign and everything that they've done with that. And Cash App itself specifically has been able to grow in a lot of the areas that tech apps, especially consumer tech apps, don't necessarily have the strongest hold in. They're strongest in the South. And those are areas that are definitely being a bit more interested into hip hop than, let's say, emerging consumer tech trends. But that's why it's been able to gain the traction it has. And in a lot of ways, this is still a company that's been underreported on and not necessarily represented in the same light as others. But the reach is incredible. I think a lot of us thought that Venmo and PayPal had a lock on payments, sending it back and forth. But Cash App has really been able to hit and reach a certain type of customer and connect in a way that we rarely had seen in payments specifically, and just understanding how referrals work, how brand building works, and how giving away cash, and if you have an ability to do that, can help you get at your long-term goal. Because a lot of this for Cash App is a loss leader strategy for them to get more people to come on the platform and start trading Bitcoin and cryptocurrency and all the other things that are higher leverage revenue income streams. So I think that they are an example, as I mentioned, that how can you integrate with the culture in a way that is authentic? They let the artists speak for themselves and they don't try to do any of the speaking, but they're doing it in a very intentional way. And I know they have a staff that's focused on this.
Amazing. And guys, read the article. It goes even more in depth as far as how they've done it like you said, so organically and genuinely without seeming like your corny uncle or something, right? What the mistake a lot of brands do in trying too hard. So go to Trap It Out, do yourself a favor. This next question is for Jesse. More and more artists are giving out their phone numbers, right? As emo overdose is very real. You hosted a conversation recently on with Jake Udell of Community. Can you tell us more how text messaging marketing is shaking up the playing field?
Yeah, text messaging marketing is, first of all, giving great ROI. Right now, text messaging, email culture is exploding, but text messaging is really the highest I've seen out in terms of conversion to sales. So artists are loving it. It's direct conversations. There's no middleman. You don't have to go through TikTok, which could disappear in 2 months, or Instagram to talk to your community. You can sell direct. You can talk direct, and it's a very high conversion rate. Community is one of the brands out right now that is really revolutionizing the space when it comes to the artist side of things. And they're doing a great job of seeding big celebrities like the Puff Daddies and the Ellens and the, a lot of the big name artists that are using it. Now, it drives me wild that Puffy's going to go on TV and say something like, this is my real number, text me. Sure, he's responding, but it's not his real cell phone number, right? But he is giving that information out, and he is having conversations, and he can have it on scale. The thing that I think people got to realize, and all of a sudden, community having your cell phone number out on your Instagram or on your Twitter has become the new verified. Because community is in so high demand, it's very hard to get through the wait list and approved as a phone number. But the thing that I don't think people realize is these artists have been gifted these numbers as promotion, but there's a real cost affiliated with texting and texting on scale. And the only way that this long-term makes sense is if you can be able to garner the sales. Because if you have 25, 50,000 fans, and that's not that much for some of these influencers and musicians, to be on text, and you're sending text 2 to 3 times a week, there's going to be really high hard costs attached. And a lot of them aren't paying it yet, but at any point in time, right now, community is just right now all about mass adoption. And there's a couple other platforms that are doing this as well. Superphone with Ryan Leslie, Open Message with Bon and Bao. It's definitely going to be a short-term hot space, the text direct-to-consumer conversation. But I think long-term, it's a lot more expensive than an email, and it's going to be costly to market in that capacity.
Wow. So definitely an area to watch. And guys, time flies when you're having fun. We had a couple questions left, but as we're nearing the hour here, we're going to go ahead and move to Q&A. A lot of audience members over there sending some incredible questions. Our first question comes from Kelly, and this is to the group at large. How can bigger companies and agencies help support newer artists and small venues as the world opens up? We'll go through the same order. Jesse, you start first.
In terms of opening small venues?
It says, how can bigger companies and agencies help support newer artists and small venues as the world opens up? This question is from Kelly.
Yeah, it's a very hard, complicated time. So I think that fan bases and fan clubs is going to be a good way to do it. I think like Cash App is going to be a good way to do it. I think one great growth period, and I don't know if we're opening up. Look, 80-90% of artists' revenue was in the live space, especially if they're signed to a major label. And now that money is gone for the foreseeable future. And if it comes back in June, that would be good news. It probably is going to be later for a lot of artists in terms of touring and being able to make live revenue. So what I think is a great way is brand partnerships. Brands need to cut through the noise. Artists want the support and are more eager than ever to do these type of brand deals for various reasons. And I think that we can look at these brand partnerships, and we're seeing it. These agency departments are now really booming in the brand partnership side. And I think we're going to see more and more volume. And I think agencies and indies, we should try to do brand partnerships with artists and venues as much as possible. And even if it's smaller, we should just get creative and try and support with brand dollars, because it's a very valuable marketing resource connecting with artists and platforms like these venues.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sarah, anything to add?
I completely agree. I think that's a great idea as far as how to kind of bounce back. And for the smaller artists or newer artists who are planning to hit the road when that's possible, I feel like being specific, bigger promoters can book those artists, right? When these shows get going, that's where the money should be spent. Just investing in that next generation of artists and getting them on festivals and, supporting these bigger gigs that are happening. And then as far as the smaller venues are concerned, I think trying to create some programming that makes a splash that isn't the usual club show that we're used to seeing, trying to get some bigger bands in these smaller venues to really reinvigorate them and raise some money and just, do some residencies and things that we've already seen, but are more dire at this point. So I don't know necessarily what the right answer is, because the truth is that there are some artists who are beginning their careers who may not make it through this because they don't have a choice. They turn to other industries because they haven't been able to survive the pandemic. And so, that's a really hard thing to just accept. But I think that supporting them once that's a possibility is what big companies can do, and what they have to do.
Absolutely. Agreed. 1,000%. Dan, anything to add to that?
No, nothing else to add. I agree with both those.
Ditto. Shenandoah?
Well, Live Nation has historically had Once to Watch and Live from the Lobby, which are two events that we had, small plays for bands to be discovered and to play for people in the music industry. So it'll be like an open bar concept, and it's literally at our lobby, at our ice house or our main office space, where small bands who want to be opening for a larger band would just come in, and we will revamp the space with sound and lights and have them play. And it's a great time, and it's a great way to be discovered. And I think, other promoters echoing that, to put these bands right in front of professionals in the music business with access would be great.
Amazing. Yeah, I think ditto to everything that was said. Right now is an amazing time for brands and agencies to build that real affinity and equity with artists, especially emerging artists, because they will remember who was there to help them through this time, right? And be fair, right? We see a lot of artists that are over leveraged, right? We've heard Young Thug air out his experiences on future earnings and how this is impacting. We're seeing some trends on the publishing side, and I'm sure some folks are going to come out the other, and entities are going to come out the other end of this with some extensive catalogs, right? Because folks need that revenue. So brands and agencies, I think there's a lot to chew on in terms of what can be done to support at every level. This next question is something we touched on, and it was actually one of the questions coming up. It comes from Mike. What's everyone's take on experiences that are being put on via video games and social media apps? Wave XR, for example, is paving the way for a new landscape within the digital world. We saw their weekend collaboration with TikTok that was like 2 million, viewers, and Travis Scott with Fortnite and Epic Games. What are your guys' take? We'll go through the same order. Jesse?
I love the gaming space. I think gaming is really where the future is in a lot of ways. I feel like that's where the youth is playing, and I feel like gaming companies are getting stronger and are actually shifting culture. Like case in point, Fortnite, what they did with Travis Scott, what they're doing with Diplo, their consistent performances from Marshmello to what they've got coming up is awesome. and it's gaining so much credibility and traction that it's positioning them to topple the App Store, or at least really fire a strong dart at them that might topple them, because the App Store, Apple's App Store, Google's App Store, they're charging really unfair and just rates that don't make sense necessarily. They just kind of came up with them arbitrary, and they're just holding to them against gaming companies. And it's not necessarily great for the consumer, and it's not great for the gaming companies. So as these gaming companies continue to pick up speed, and I think artists can help them. And there's a lot of different interesting virtual worlds. I feel like these virtual worlds are the future, and I feel like these gaming companies in a lot of ways can shape culture, because they've got the fan base, they've got the audience, they've got the revenue, and sky's the limit in terms of creativity and innovation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sarah, anything to add?
No, I think it's brilliant.
Dan?
Yeah, I think with the gaming space, I agree with everything that Jesse said. I think that there's a huge opportunity in music, and I think that spans from the Fortnite and those types of games. You know, massive audience is very interactive, but it's also everything that's happening with your League of Legends and your esports and that stuff. But it's also what's happening with Animal Crossing and games like that. And I think when we think about the opportunity more broadly, it gets a little bit past the type of person or the type of profile that you would expect to be playing a Fortnite. It looks a little bit broader if you think about some of the other games there. I think we've already started to see some examples, like Issa Rae has been doing some innovative and interesting things with the record label that she started under Atlantic that is part of this video game as well that she puts out, where the artists themselves that you can use as part of the video game, somehow it ends up interacting with Insecure. So that's one example, but I think obviously with a lot of artists, with a lot of the content they talk about, they're really putting this music out in this immersive experience. So whether it's Travis Scott bringing something like Astro World to life, so many artists do that with their music. And I think that can span a lot of opportunities. And I think we're still scratching the surface, because a lot of these experiences are very much geared towards your, what I call like the Gen Z male, this, 18 to 24-year-old that is the target audience for Fortnite. But if gaming is able to look at it more broadly, there's a lot of opportunities in the entire music industry. And I'm excited to see where those go moving forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Shenandoah, anything to add?
Nothing to add. It's exciting.
Amazing. And ditto myself. This next question, what do you think about music streaming's impact on the music industry in the future? Recently, Spotify CEO Daniel Ek made some seemingly controversial statements where he kind of pointed the finger back at artists, saying that in order for them to basically make a living, they shouldn't, put out an album only one every 3 years, right? A lot of people took offense, saying that you can't mass produce art and the creative process of it, right? And a lot of people pointed to the fact that, when you're paying 0.00437 per stream, and it literally would take 360,000 streams for an artist to make what equates to minimum wage. A lot of people were like, easy for you to say, valued at 4 billion, Mr. Eck, right? What is your take on that sort of value gap and where the future holds in the streaming process? Because we're tied to it, but there are some issues and challenges, correct? We'll start with Jesse.
Yeah, the game's changed. With 40,000 new songs coming out a day on Spotify, it is there's a lot of noise, and there's a lot of music, and it's no longer about putting out this kind of classic album, because it's just so hard to keep up with the way that they're feeding you new music and the way their platform is set up. It's kind of like in the vein of social media, where it's a demand creation economy or demand creation world. The consumer is used to just constantly getting new music, and they're hooked to the playlists like New Music Friday and trying to keep up and keep afloat from what's coming in. So it's really about not necessarily, unfortunately, quality the way it's being set up right now. And it's really about creating a release cadence that keeps you top of the social graph. And that's what he's saying. He's just trying to give advice to artists of what's working on his platform. Now, is that the only show in town? At this point, it's the biggest and probably the best, but there's room for innovation and there's definitely room to fight back. But that's what works for his platform. And he's just kind of helping people to understand the best of his insights so that it can be more successful for musicians on the platform. And I think there's a lot of room to fight back there. That's a whole other conversation.
Absolutely. A whole other breakout session like most of these questions. Sarah, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with the suggestion that artists need to be putting out content consistently. That's a reality. And if you want to stay relevant, that's your task. You have to do it. But I think that it is sort of this age-old and understandable dichotomy between Daniel Ek, who's worth $4 billion and who is a tech entrepreneur, and super creative people who think so differently. And it's like, well, if it were that easy, it's like, well, when's the last time you wrote a song? It just doesn't work that way. You can't just shit stuff out, because that's not why artists got into what they're doing to begin with. I think it's possible for them to generate more potentially than an album every few years, but there's costs associated with that creation as well. And so I think in the midst of a pandemic where, except for the upper echelon of artists, people are gig workers and they are out of work, to imply that you're just not working hard enough, of course that hit poorly. It's like, it's just sort of a tone deaf thing to say. Although it's not that I think you should be dishonest about that. Because again, I don't disagree. I just think that it's simple to say. And yes, the business has grown tremendously on account of streaming. And so I think everyone is grateful for that. And everyone wants a smaller piece of a bigger pie instead of the big piece of a small pie, but everybody wants a bigger piece of a bigger pie. And, and that's wherein I think there's debate. It's like, but is there room to get a little bit more, or should we just say we're grateful for what we're getting? And I don't know, the mathematical answer to that, and what we could do that would not topple the streaming business, but that would make artists feel a little better taken care of. But that's my take on it. I think it's easier said than done to just be generating constantly.
Totally agree. Dan, anything to add?
Agreed. I think that the message came off worse because of who was saying it. It could have been delivered a little bit differently, because, I think these are conversations that have been happening. I wouldn't even say behind closed doors, like other people have been saying it as well, just given how much the dynamic has changed. But I agree with everything that Sarah and Jesse said about the dynamic and the nuance and what kind of bind it puts the majority of artists in.
Absolutely. Shenandoah?
It's tough to say, because I see both sides,
Mm-hmm.
I feel for the artist, but then I also understand Spotify's business model. And I think it's a great conversation that needs to be had more granularly. So, maybe in the future, we'll see if this sparks a way or a new way for Spotify to generate income for their artists or promote artists on their platform. I think that's the best way for both sides to hear each other and better the business that way. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this conversation plays out in the long run.
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree more with everything that was spoken. That balance, right? Where artists say, well, you grow in that interim period between projects and your fan base grows, right? So what's that balance between content over quantity, as Jesse and all of you lean into? So with that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the conclusion. We had a couple other questions, but as we stated at the beginning, each of these questions could literally be its own session. This Face the Music, I want to thank our distinguished panel of speakers here for your time and insight and knowledge, because as we collectively try to figure this out, this is the solution right here. Thank you once again to the Future Party, MVE, all the teams that made this possible to have this conversation, and obviously the audience for tuning in. We want to thank everybody involved. And again, please do yourself a favor, follow these folks, take in the information, and we're going to come out of the other end stronger and better. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What's up? It's Boy A from the Future Party here in space, chillin'. Hope you enjoyed the video. I enjoyed the video. Like, subscribe, hit the bell for more notifications. We've got some amazing things coming up. Check out the description on who the Future Party is. It's gonna be great.